bit about reference letters. I can't do that here. I think it's time to go to the studio. Okay, well, we'll go check things out in the studio, and hopefully we can get some answers for these different questions that students have been sending in related to reference letters. It's a good time to ask. All right, see you soon. Here we are. We're at the studio, so I'm going to go and take a look around. Hopefully I can have some answers for everyone that they're looking for. Actually, I haven't been up in this space, so it looks really cool. And I will just get inside the studio where you can see all of that. And I will answer your questions related to reference letters. Okay, be right back. Okay, well, I'm in the studio, and I'm actually going to try now to go through and give you some suggestions on how to approach profs or TAs or other people for reference letters in this upcoming application cycle. So I hope that you find it useful. So I think one of the key things when you're looking for a reference letter is, who do you actually ask? One thing that I would recommend is maybe asking a prof who knows you well. So not just any prof, like you might be in a first year class, and I understand that you might get really desperate, but make sure that you're taking the time to find out a little bit more about your prof's research, to engage them so that they know you and you know them, and that you feel comfortable enough to be able to ask them. I know it's a challenge, especially for first and second year students, but it is something that I actually recommend. And if you're really stuck and you're not really sure if you know your prof well enough to ask them for a reference letter, another suggestion is ask your TA. Your TA is another person who can actually comment on your academic ability and your ability to perform in different types of environments and your critical thinking skills. So always make sure that you're finding someone who can speak to whether or not you have all of the academic skill sets that you're ready to demonstrate in wherever you're asking that reference letter for. The last thing that I'll recommend for you is please find someone who knows you in the recent past. Not someone from like 3 or 4 years ago who may have a hard time remembering you, but someone who can speak to your current abilities and your abilities maybe a year ago or 2 years ago at most. And those are some of the suggestions that I have for all of you. All right, the next thing that I'd like to ask or go over with all of you is, what do I ask for when I talk to my prof? Well, one of the things that you should make very clear is that you will need a strong but also personalized reference letter. So it's not a very effective reference letter if all you're asking for is a grade in the course, that they took a course, or that you're confirming different factual details. They should be able to give you a strong but also personalized letter on your behalf. I think the best thing, again, keeping your email very short, so I know that you want to get as much detail in there as possible, but just have on outlines in point form of the different types of things that you would like highlighted in that letter. Often that really helps your prof to get those ideas down, especially if it's been over a year since you might have had a chance to speak with them. Again, one other thing, please avoid copying and pasting. I can't tell you how many times I've received a request for a reference letter from an individual who actually tried to get a different letter of reference from another prof or another TA, and I just got the copy pasted and it's addressed to someone completely different, or they're talking about a completely different course. And that just makes it feel like you don't really care about who you're asking, and that you're asking out of desperation. And if you are asking out of desperation, maybe just indicate that rather than copying and pasting. Those are, again, just some of my own personal reflections on this, and I hope that that might be of some help to you, and hopefully that answers your question. I think another thing to keep in mind is try to avoid too many emails. You don't want emails going back and forth asking, can I get a reference letter from you, and then get a response, and then get a subsequent follow-up email. So wherever possible, I would recommend that you get right out there in front and provide all the details that you are going to ask your prof for. And these are the types of common things that I would ask a student who emails me for a reference letter. So I would make sure that you don't have too many emails, provide your transcript, your CV, and the details of the application up front in that very first email. Keep that email brief, but have all that information there so that you don't have the bounce back from all the different emails going back and forth. Sooner or later, that leads to sort of a broken chain. The other thing is, please include the format of the application. So sometimes you have a reference letter that is just a checklist. Sometimes it is a free-form letter. Sometimes it's a combination of that. Sometimes it's short answers, short questions, short responses. And that will make a big difference as to whether or not your prof will say yes or no, or your TA will say yes or no. So all of the details of that reference letter request, put that up front so that you avoid too many questions going back and forth. And always, please provide due dates. So sometimes the prof will say yes, and then we'll have to apologize later on because they realize that that's at a very busy time of the semester, or they're not able to accommodate that request because you've asked for something that's due in 2 or 3 weeks. Provide those due dates as soon as you possibly can. And I think also provide other details for your prof that might be useful for the particular application that you are looking for. So if it involves leadership, provide some details of like leadership that wouldn't actually occur or be readily evident in your different CV, transcript, or other places. So those are some suggestions for you in terms of what you should be including in that email. Hopefully that will help cut down sort of that traffic and some of that anxiety. So I think this is actually the toughest question. So you've crafted that really beautiful letter, your email to your prof. You are very hopeful that you're going to be hearing back. But what happens if you don't hear back? Well, one, give yourself plenty of time. So don't ask for a reference letter that's due in 2 or 3 weeks. If you can give yourselves at least a couple of months in advance, just reach out as early as you possibly can. And one of the reasons why I'm asking you to do this is that after 2 weeks, if you haven't heard anything, there's no response to your email, I would suggest trying at least one more time. And if you don't hear after that period of time, like giving it another week or so, then I would actually move on to maybe an alternate professor, TA, or someone else who knows a little bit more about your academic or research capabilities. And then if all else fails and you really hope to connect with your prof and you're not sure if they're checking your email, one suggestion that I found really useful personally is when students will drop off a personal little note saying that, you know, I would really love a reference letter from you. I have emailed you and I haven't heard back. And usually that will get things going. If you're capable of dropping off a personal little note, just asking for some confirmation, that often helps as well. Instead of having like multiple emails or emails every other day, which again, I would really suggest not doing. Don't flood your professor's inbox with email requests for that reference letter. If they're interested in doing it and they have the time to read through it, they will. So don't flood their inboxes. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, if you haven't heard anything, after you've tried 2 emails and after you've tried dropping off a personal note, I would actually then suggest a different letter writer, and that's again my suggestion. We're almost at the end, folks, so a couple of suggestions. Things to avoid when you are communicating with your profs. One thing, just don't ask for too many letters. So I have had in the past students asking for 20 different reference letters. And you might think that, oh, can your prof not simply copy and paste each of those different reference letters? Please don't assume that these are really easy to write. They don't take 5 minutes, even if you have a similar format across multiple letter requests. Often each of those different requests, in terms of the formatting, in terms of getting them set up appropriately, in terms of filling out the different boxes, there's a minimum 10 minutes per reference letter, even if I'm reusing parts of a reference letter. And usually most of these reference letters, even if I've written one, will take about 20 to 30 minutes to go through to make sure that everything is correct, accurate, and it is to the benefit of the student. So don't make those assumptions. Those are things to avoid. And I would really suggest not asking for too many reference letters from the same prof if you at all possibly can. I think also it's okay to send a reminder email. But I would also be very cautious on that, so don't send too many. Just maybe send a week from when it's due, just a reminder that that reference letter is due soon. But try to avoid just flooding that inbox again with requests and reminders that the reference letter is now 5 days away, 4 days away, 3 days away, 2 days away. your prof, if they've agreed to do it, usually will schedule it as part of their calendar. I usually set aside 1 day a week where I'm writing reference letters, so I always have that in mind, and I have a list of different reference letters I have to write. Different profs will approach it different ways, but those are some suggestions. Just don't try to remind too frequently, but one reminder email, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. I would say that one thing to keep in mind as we get into fall 2023 and as we think ahead to winter 2024, many of your profs are going to be on what is called academic leave. So many of them have deferred it over the last 1 to 2 years during the pandemic, where they were allowed to go on research leave or sabbaticals. Some of them, like myself, have gone on administrative leave, where I've taken up a different administrative role, been a little bit removed from teaching. And so these different types of responsibilities and different roles often lead to profs not being able to write reference letters. And you might think that, well, if they're on leave, wouldn't it be easier to write a reference letter? It's not that they're taking a vacation. Often they're doing research, they're in a different country, or they're deeply engaged in research that they put off. So they really want to focus because they have 6 months to a year to be able to finish all of that. So again, just some different things for you to keep in mind as you are sending out those carefully crafted, short email letters to your profs who know you best. I think that's all I have for you now, and I hope that some of these will be useful for everyone here.